Hello everyone and welcome back to this project series. In this project we are building a Reddit thread analyzer using LangGraph. And so far we have built versions v1, v2 and v3. v3 being the last, being the one that we discussed in the last video. Just as a quick recap, the user passes on the URL of the Reddit thread and the query. We have the first node which normalizes the URL. So if there is no /.json, that's still fine. The node does the normalization and then hits the Reddit web page to extract the thread data, which is basically your title, description and comments plus score. Right, and using the score we basically filter out or we only consider the top 50% of the comments, and along with the title, description and the user query, these comments are also fed in to the next node, which is the analyzing thread. This basically takes in the input and provides some detailed insights back to the user. Right, now let's look at what the advantages of this particular node or this particular version is over the previous one. First is we are doing filtering of the comments. So earlier we considered all the comments equally. So this time we are bringing in some structure and we have ranked them to only identify the top comments, because like I mentioned in the previous one, Reddit is a sort of a user-led and like that kind of engagement-led platform. So if a comment or reply has many upvotes, it is more likely to be more informative, right? So that is the idea behind it. Not so perfect, but I think good start. So that's the first advantage. Second is improved output structure. Instead of having sort of a generic output, we brought in more structure to the prompt itself. So better prompting led to better outputs for this particular node, right? So that's the second advantage. And third is separation of concerns. So earlier we had one thread which did all the sort of extraction and the analyzing part, but here we have separated it so that if anything goes wrong, you'll know which one is wrong and you'll know where to optimize or fix any concerns. Right, so that's the third one. And finally you have the URL normalization. Of course this is a teeny tiny update, but the idea is that we don't want to burden the user into putting in a specific format of URL. Right, you could just pass in an URL either with or without /.json at the end, but the node will do the required normalization. So these are were the advantages. Before looking into the disadvantages, I want to give a quick theory behind how Reddit works, or what kind of posts you can find on Reddit. Of course, if you have already used Reddit, you'll know that Reddit posts in general you can summarize it into three main types. The first one being something like a question-led post, right? So you have the user who posts the question, right? And this could be what do you say, a question like, hey, I'm going to a trip, going to Italy for a trip, and what are the best places to visit, and maybe give me an itinerary for like a 7-day trip, right? Some question like this. So you have the question here, and it's okay, you have the question here, and you have a bunch of discussion right below here. This is one type, right? If you go to the second type, it could be something like a user giving passing his or no sharing his experience with something. Maybe let's say he just cracked the job in one of the FANG companies, and he's giving out his roadmap or sharing his experience, how he cleared some certain rounds and so on. So his user or like the post is he's going to be sharing his experience, and then you have discussion in the comments below. Right, now if you see, before going to the third one, if you see already, you'll know the difference. This post, kind of post where it is question led, the bulk of the information that is useful, you'll find it in the comments below. But in an experience-led post, you'll find most of the relevant information in the post, right? And of course, the third variant is where the user asks some question. Maybe it's like a opinion that he has shared, and then there's an equal or acceptance or opposing views in the description. So this is sort of like a balanced approach, right? You will have good information here, and of course within the comments too. So broadly, these are the three kinds of classifications that you'll see in a Reddit post, right? Now, why is this important? Because now if you go back to our node or like our version, we are nowhere considering this sort of structure here, right? All we're doing is we're considering all the comments equally and all the uh, um, what do you say, all the Reddit posts equally, right? This is something that has to be factored in for the LLM to have like a baseline understanding of what it is expecting, or like what the post or the comments is eventually trying to tell, right? So if you look at the comments, we did not bring in any type of thread type awareness, right? So oops, so this is like a question type post, this is like an experience sharing post, and this is more of a balanced post, right? So we want to capture this awareness here, and there is no adaptive emphasis. So what I mean by that is, again, based on these, the LLM's response has to change, right? Because in this case, it has to look into the comments and look for some alternate opinions, look for some underlying, some hidden gems, and maybe the most popular responses and so on. But if it were to look at a post like this, it's going to simply look at the experience section, or the only the posts area, like give importance to this particular area, and then no, likely just summarize it, or see the sentiment of the user and so on. But if you see here, it has to give sort of equal balance to both the sections. So we have to bring in that kind of adaptiveness, and due to these two reasons, our final insight is still lacking depth, right? Of course, we moved from here to this variant where we sort of structured the prompt better to bring in a more structured and insightful response. But even then, because of the first two reasons, our insights are still lacking, and that's what we'll try and resolve in the next version, right? Now, I think it's a good idea to dive into the code straight away. um, Actually, no, let's just do this workflow quickly, so that way we'll understand what uh, to expect. So the first step remains same. And by the way, right, you remember from the previous video I mentioned we have a good baseline here. You have the input, you have the output, and you have this sort of extraction process. So going forward, we'll have to optimize these three sections, and that's at least what I'm trying to do. Here we of course optimize the extraction process, and also optimize the output. In this particular one, I think we are again doing the same, optimizing the sort of extraction process and further enhancing the output. Yeah, so the input is pretty much the same. You have the URL and the query. This is again the same. It normalizes the URL and fetches the thread data. But this time, along with comments and score, we are also fetching the subreddit, the actual subreddit, and also the comments count, right? Now, why is this? I'll tell you shortly. So what we're doing is we are taking this data, so basically the subreddit, the title, description, and comments count, to fetch the archetype. Now, what is this archetype? It is basically this, right? We are trying to detect what type of post this is, and that's what I mean by archetype. Now, why only these in particular? Of course, you can try and check if there could be any other variable that might be a better indicator. But basically, if you look at a post, you have your title, you have the description, the number of comments, and the sort of subreddit. Now, these are indicative of what the post is trying to tell, right? Based on, especially based on the title and the description, we can get a better sense. And of course, with comments, if there's like heavy comments involved, we'll know that it's also like a maybe it is shifting towards something like a question, or maybe like a balanced approach. So these are the parameters we were feeding in. One more thing that's coming to my mind is, of course, maybe giving it a sample of the comments itself. That way it can analyze how the comments are actually, right? Sometimes we might have many comments, but it could be just acknowledging or like congratulating the user or something, but might not be really insightful. Yes, that's something to keep in the back of the mind. So basically these four variables go in, and we detect the archetype, right? So we get the thread archetype, and we also get the primary source of value, right? So yeah, so archetype is basically the type of the post, and primary source of value is indicating where to look at, either title and description or the comments, right? And apart from this, the other variables remain the same: title, description, comments, filter, and query. So these are the four, literally the same, and feed it in the analyzed thread, and we get the insights. And I'll actually show you later. This is also something that we have optimized now. I've written a more structured prompt that will make use of these additional details to provide the more insightful answer. So I hope that was clear. So let's now do the ritual and go to VS Code and understand how we have structured the data. The libraries are same, or in fact we do have some extra libraries, but yeah, first step is to import the libraries. We're loading the environment variables, initializing the LLM. Now earlier I left it to default. I think I just said LLM equal to chat OpenAI, but what I found was, while doing some LLM calls, I think especially around structured prompting, the default ChatGPT model wasn't working. Not ChatGPT, default chat OpenAI model wasn't working well. I think by default it chooses GPT 3.5. I'm not sure, but yeah, I found this model to be working really well, so that's why I chose this. We define the state variables. You can see there's a bunch of increment to this. Of course, you have the user query and the URL from the input. We are also choosing the subreddit type, title, description, and the comments count, right? So these are four variables from the post section. And then you have all the comments, filtered comments, comment context. These remain the same. And apart from this, you have your thread type and the primary source. So this is where the output from the archetype comes, and these are the two details that you get. The helper function for URL is same. Helper function to extract comments and upvotes is same. The first node is to extract is for extraction and for getting the metadata. So you have some pretty standard that we have been following, but apart from that, you have of course the subreddit and the comment count that's also extracted. Now, if you remember, I think this was the second video where we discussed, or we in fact looked at how the Reddit sort of JSON values are structured, and we're just following the same. It's worth revisiting the second video in particular, and trying out or experimenting with the structure on your own. So you might identify some more variables that can be useful for our use case. And for any reason, if you still find the structure intimidating or difficult to understand, do reach out to me, and I'm happy to take a look and help you out there, right? Yeah, so with that, let's go back. The rest of the things pretty much remain the same. While returning, you will return two additional state variables now. That's subreddit and the comment count, right? So that's your first node, which is extraction. The second node is the archetype detection. So here is where I have written a prompt, and if you remember, I've the way I've structured the code is a bit different now. Earlier I said that we'll define all the prompts at once and define all the nodes later on, but I found it a bit confusing. So I've just stuck to specific nodes, and the prompt used within that will be under the same section, right? But in future we can like create a separate file which consists of all the prompts, and then we'll call the prompt to the actual main file. That way we can reduce the sort of lengthiness of this file, right? But those are just cleanups and optimization of the code that we'll do later on. For now, let's just see what kind of prompt this is. So it says you're classifying a Reddit thread. Based on the title, description, subreddit, and number of comments, classify the thread into one of question-led, experience-led, and balanced. Also, determine the primary source of value, comments, post, or both, right? And written strictly in JSON format. So we are expecting an output in this format, thread type and primary source. And of course, you have given the other information. Now, although we ask it to produce the data in a JSON format, LLMs are LLMs, and they do make mistakes because they are not deterministic, and any output with a different format is bound to break, right? Which is why we use something called as the structured output, right? So we basically define a base model and define the structure that we're expecting. So this is a string and this is a string, and then we chain this prompt to the LLM that is built on top of this structured model. So these are some basics of LangChain and LangGraph. You could obviously revisit them, but the idea is to force the output into a specific structure, right? So now I'll invoke this particular chain with the inputs, and the output of this will be updated within a state variables. So that's node 2 for you, which is the detection of archetype. And finally we'll move to the analyze thread. This is where our sort of magic happens, because we're getting insights out of this, right? So this time I've structured the prompt differently. I've given it a system prompt and a where is it and a human prompt, right? So system prompt is to sort of convey it that at baseline this is what you have to do, right? But at the human level is where we give in some more additional detail, right? So system level we are saying that you are an analytical assistant evaluating a Reddit discussion. We have fed in the thread archetype and the primary source of value. Baseline reasoning rules: first, understand the nature of the thread using the archetype. If question led, identify the strongest supported answers and areas of consensus. If experience led, extract lessons, insights, and generalizable takeaways. If balanced, identify competing viewpoints and summarize arguments fairly. So these are some good pointers based on the nature of the thread type, right? Now use the primary source of value to guide emphasis. So this is done. Now based on the primary source of value, if it is comments, prioritize community responses. If it is post, prioritize the original description, and if it is both, of course weigh both of them carefully. And finally, shape the final answer strictly around the user query. Do not provide generic summaries unless the query explicitly asks for one. If insufficient information is available, state that clearly. Be concise, analytical, and structured with necessary. Avoid unnecessary verbosity and so on. So these are some information or like rules that the LLM is expected to follow, and which is fed at the system level. At the human level, we're just passing some more information: Reddit thread context, which is title, description, filtered comments, and user question. We're giving it some more instruction here, and these are pretty much the same from our previous prompt. I think only one more information that I've added is, of course, if the question does not have a clear answer in the context, say I do not know based on the available information, right? And the rest is followed as per the previous prompt that we used in version v3. After that, it's pretty much the same. We're building this node, and all the details are fed in now. So we have 6 different inputs now, and all of them are fed through the state variables. The output is of course only the insight, and yeah, so that's node 3 for you. And then we build the graphs. We have the 3 nodes, the edges moving just in a straight line, or like a linear flow. We compile the graph, and let's now test the discussion, right? Or like test this out. So it's the same URL from last time, and let's actually post the same question from last time as well. Oops. So this was our question, right? So let's try and ask the same thing. What we'll do is, of course, we'll run the variant one, like the previous version first, so that way we can try and compare the answers a bit. um, why am I seeing it like this? I hope it's running. Yeah, we've got the answer, but and now I'll also, oops, and also run the version v4. And while it's running, let's move to Langsmith, refresh the data, and of course take a quick look at how the answer flows between the various nodes. I think this is still loading, but we have the version v3 ready. We had just the two nodes, extract thread data. Something that I think I missed showing in the previous step is, if you see, this URL did not have a .json in the end, but nonetheless it appended, and it was able to hit the Reddit to get us the data. Now the reason you don't see is because we didn't update the state variable with the latest URL. We're still resorting to the old URL, and I think that's still fine, right? Let's just quickly just check the output, right? Because we know what the other variables are supposed to tell. The output is here. So we have some key insights, some actionable takeaways. I think it's fine, right? I think it's better than a base version that we built initially. But now let's see the version v4, the latest one. Actually, even before going there, I can already see there's a bump in the latency and the tokens, and that's quite expected because of the number of nodes that we're doing, and bringing in that intermediate steps. Of course, this is something that we have to optimize, but yeah, nonetheless, that's not the point here. We'll come back to that at some point in the series. First is extracting thread data. So at an input level, we are feeding in only the URL and the user query, and we have the subreddit, which is startups, title, description, all comments, comment count as well. It says 125. We have filtered comments, basically taking the top 50%, and comment context is basically joining all of them together. So this is quite standard. Let's go to a deduction of archetype. You'll see a bunch of steps here, and that's just simply because we have to we also did the structured prompting. So you have the prompt, you have the LLM call, but also this is structured in a LangChain way, which is why you see that LangChain, that like the chain that we did. So what is happening here is, so this is everything comes under one step. So we pass in these four details, right? And the output we expect is the primary source, which is comments, and the thread type, which is question led, and that's quite accurate, I guess. Here if you remember, we have been following the same single example. Here the user is asking some question, and majority of the discussion is from here. So this will form the core understanding for the LLM before proceeding with the answers. And in the analyze thread, we pass in all the 6 inputs, right? And your insight is this. Right now you'll see that this insight is a bit more structured, right? The average salary range for pre-seed founders who have just raised fund. So you have some brief overview, key insights, important perspectives, actionable takeaways, and so on. And this was possible because we gave the LLM the relevant context of what kind of post it is, where to look for the relevant information, and so on. And I think this is like a good improvement, because this would then replicate a sense of how a user would approach such posts. Let's do another example, right? I'm going to quickly pause this video and look for another example that we can use. Actually, I thought I'll search it with you. You would typically search something on Google, right? Mac versus Windows for a ML engineer job, and I would typically add Reddit at the end, so it would search for a relevant post. And let's say So this is, how do you think Mac? Well, this is again uh, question led, but yeah, but nonetheless, let's just give it a try. I wanted to actually try out a different um, variant of archetype, like a different archetype, but nonetheless, so let's say, should I go for Mac? And let's ask this. Meanwhile, maybe let's try and find another post. Uh, Cracking Fang. Yeah, okay, yeah, this is a good example. This person has put in so much information about how he has, I don't know, cracked a job, I guess. Uh, so maybe let's try this too. Yeah, so this answer is ready. We'll take a look at that, but let's try out this too. And let's say how I went from low level startup to FANG in 3 months, aka interview tips and tricks. I don't know, let's say I want to get into um, Meta. Give me 5 actionable steps. And let's run this. Meanwhile, let's go to Langsmith and oh, by the way, Langsmith is like an observability tool where you can trace your inputs, outputs, and like the flow of data. If I'm sure you'd have already sensed this, but I do have a playlist. If you're new to this platform, I think it's a good starting point to check it out. But yeah, nice plug for the content that I've made. But yeah, so this was the laptop one, right? Let's see if it has identified the archetype. Um, Oops, I had to look here into specifically. Again, question led and sources comments. Let's look at the final output. And here it says Reddit thread context. Oops, I'm looking at the wrong one, title description. Yeah, so where am I looking? Where's the output? Where's the output? Yeah, here's the output insight. So performance for machine learning users incline that while small models can be trained on MacBook, the performance is the OS considerations. Many users strongly recommend Linux for machine learning tasks. In conclusion, consider your primary needs. If profitability and ease of use are critical, a Mac may suffice for requirements for. Okay, so see how it has now structured these answers, right? It has brought in some OS considerations, important perspectives, and also of course a conclusion, and so this is a more detailed and like a insightful response, right? And I really like this kind of answer if I were to summarize the thread. Let's now also look at the final example maybe. I think this video is getting too long, so let's just take a quick look at this one. So ideally this was like an experience led post, right? A very long one for that matter. Yeah, so primary source should be post and thread type is experience led, just as we expected. And if you look at this, we asked it for 5 actionable steps. I guess that was the question, right? I want to get into Meta, give me 5 actionable steps, right? Output, yeah. Brief overview. To get into Meta, the advice in the discussion suggests a focused approach to to both the technical and interpersonal effects of aspects of the interview process. Key insights: resume tailoring. I think the 5 points here: actionable takeaways, prioritize dedicated intervention. See again how it has sort of modified the response now. Earlier we had like a dedicated I don't know perspectives or actionable insights and so on, but this time we have a different response, and this was because we gave it the understanding of what the underlying sort of post type is and where to look for the information. Let's just do one last quick one, and then call it a day if there. What if I give it an information that's not there in the post, right? I want to get into Accenture. um, yeah, new graduate program. What are the skills I should have based on this thread? Accenture is not a FANG company, so ideally should not have information and that's what we expect. If not, then that's something that we have to go back to the prompt that we built. I do not know based on the available information. That's totally fine, right? So that's what we expected. I think we can try out some more examples if there's like a partial match or no. But yeah, I think that's pretty much for this video. This was like a really good improvement from V3 to V4, I believe. Something that I'm thinking along for the next direction. Of course, we will discuss in detail, but I myself don't have um, um, the direction for the not really direction, I would say, but I don't have the necessary sort of vision for the next version. But the direction I'm looking into is maybe bringing in more personas. Here we are doing one summarizing, um, but a thread can have multiple layers to it, right? We can bring in more personas and move towards an agentic workflow. I think that will be really an interesting update to this version. I'm really excited about it. I'm gonna spend a couple of days iterating with it, right? And let's see how that comes along. I hope you're enjoying the videos so far. We have built version V4. I think 4 then 5 videos probably. And do let me know in the comments. I'm active on LinkedIn, like I always say. Do reach out if you have any questions, and I'm more than happy to help you out. And yeah, that's it for this video. Thank you, and see you in the next one.